Hi everyone, it's Craig Campbell from Pastor Craig's Vintage Card with another deep dive to a 1956 Topps baseball card. Today we're going to be looking at Eddie Miksis. And again, I love the 56 Topps. They're my favorite card. And here we have the classic pose with Miksis batting, the catcher, and the umpire. Again, I like the I like the cards with the umpire in them, actually. I think they're pretty neat. But this is an interesting card. Eddie Miksis, and he played outfield for the Chicago Cubs. And you can see this is card number 285. And you can look on the corners and see that this card's pretty well loved. It's not in the best of shape, but I just love these 1956 cards. And you can see that Eddie was born in New Jersey in 1926. And let's take a look at Eddie Miksis and his baseball career. Eddie Miksis with the Chicago Cubs. Branch Rickey had promised Dodger fans in 1948 that Miksis will fix us. The Brooklyn management loved Eddie's slick fielding, his speed, and his attitude. They thought so highly of him that they actually bought a controlling interest in his minor league club that he played for in 1944 just so that they could get him. And he had a decent big league career, but it's interesting. We'll see that it seemed like future Hall of Famers continually beat him out of position jobs. He made his major league debut with the Dodgers on June 17th of 1944 as he played against the Phillies, and he was a pinch runner, and he scored the first of 4 runs in a ninth inning rally. And then he ended up playing shortstop in the bottom of the ninth inning. Miksis played in only 10 games during the rest of the season. And, he played in 10 games as shortstop during the rest of the season and then 15 at third base. So he had appeared in 35 games and he had 91 at-bats where he hit 220. It was clear that Miksis needed some seasoning. He was still a really young guy, and he ended up going into the Navy in 1945 and 1946. And when he got out of the Navy, he came back and joined the Dodgers on July 2nd. Of 1946, and he hit 146 in 23 games over the remainder of the season. Miksis spent most of the 1947 season as a pinch runner and as an occasional backup to second baseman Eddie Stanky. He hit a career high 267 with 4 home runs, and the Dodger brass they figured that Miksis was going to turn into be a 20 or more home run hitter over a full season. They were convinced that he was their second baseman of the future. Now, Eddie Miksis, in the 1947 World Series, he figured into one of the most celebrated rallies of all time, as in Game 4 against the New York Yankees, it was Game 4 against the Yankees with, the game was 2-1, and Bill Bevins had taken a no-hitter into the bottom of the ninth inning at Ebbets Field. Bevins had walked 2, but he had gotten 2 people out. And he was 1 out away from the first World Series no-hitter. Again, this is 1947. A pinch runner was on second base, and Miksis was also pinch running, was on first base. And years later, Miksis remembered that with 2 outs, George McQuinn, the Yankee first baseman, was playing way off the bag, and that allowed for Miksis to get a really big lead. And when Lavaghetto hit a fly to right field wall, by the time the Yankees got the ball, Miksis was sliding home with their winning run, and he says it was the biggest explosion of noise in the history of Brooklyn. The series was tied, and the Yankees would eventually win the World Series in 7 games. But Miksis had scored that winning run in the bottom of the ninth inning when he got that huge lead off of first base and was able to get all the way and score the home run and score the run. They really thought that he was going to be their second baseman of the future, but Jackie Robinson, who had played first base in 1947, he moved to second base, relegating Miksis to a backup role. Miksis played in 86 games in 1948 and had 221 at-bats, but he just hit 213 with 2 home runs. And when the 1950s dawned, the Dodgers were content with having Miksis fill in for Jackie Robinson or for Pee Wee Reese. And he was still in his 20s, and Miksis had asked for a trade. Well, the Dodgers did. They traded Miksis to the Chicago Cubs. In 1952, Miksis had injured a knee on opening day, and he only played 93 games. And in 1953, he came back, and he played in 142 games. He had 625 plate appearances and with 145 hits, and he stole 13 bases. And but in 1954, along came Ernie Banks at shortstop, and then that was where Miksis ended up losing his job to Ernie Banks. So he lost a job to Jackie Robinson and to Ernie Banks, and those are two people. If you're going to lose a job to, I guess it's pretty good to lose it to them. In 1955, Miksis became the Cubs' regular center fielder. Again, he hit 235 and he had 9 home runs. He led the National League in fielding percentage for center fielders. He had a .989 fielding percentage, almost 99%, beating out Duke Snider, and it was the only time that he would lead the league in any category. They wanted more offense, so in 1956 he was relegated to a utility role, and then the Cubs traded him to the St. Louis Cardinals before the '57 season. He played very sporadically for the Cardinals, and then the Cardinals sold him to the Baltimore Orioles in September of '56, and the Baltimore then released him in May of '58 after he appeared in just 3 games. 2 days later, the Cincinnati Reds signed him, and he got into 69 games with the Reds in 1958. Eddie retired after the 1958 season, and the funny thing about him is he actually received 1 vote in 1964 for the Hall of Fame. The vote prompted one newspaperman to call off for a congressional investigation into Hall of Fame voting. And he was contacted years later, and Eddie had no illusions about the quality of his baseball career. He said to the unknown voter, I think the person who voted for me was a true baseball expert. He wasn't interested in stats. He must have had a few beers before he made out his ballot. Eddie Miksis, he was never an all-star, but he appreciated that he could play baseball for a living. And he said, my biggest thrill as a baseball player was getting paid every 2 weeks to play a game that I loved. And Eddie Miksis, he ended up with a little over 3,000 at-bats. He had a .236 average with 722 career hits, with 44 home runs and 228 RBIs. But he did score 383 runs because he was used as a pinch hitter a lot, and a pinch runner, a lot. And Eddie played for the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Cubs, St. Louis, Baltimore, and Cincinnati. He appeared on Bowman 1951 and 52 Bowman cards, and then the 54 and 55 Bowman issues, as well as the 52 and 53 tops, and then the 56 through 1959 tops. Eddie Miksis died on April 8th of 2005 in Pennsylvania. And again, here's a story of a guy that his greatest thrill was getting paid to play a game that he loved. And I'm happy to have Eddie's card in my 1956 set. And it's always enjoyable to learn more about these guys. And, here's a guy that was a lifelong major leaguer, never a great player, a light hitter, good defender. But he was beat out by Jackie Robinson and Eddie Banks for positional players. And I guess if you're going to get beat out by a positional player, those are 2 guys that are pretty darn good. So I hope you've enjoyed this story on Eddie Miksis. And again, I just enjoy these deep dives on these 56 tops players, getting to learn more about their careers instead of just getting the card for the set and never looking at it again. But I hope you've enjoyed this as well as I have. Thanks for watching. Have a great night and keep on collecting.